Hello everybody. So I was hearing the other day somebody was saying something really profound, saying the amount of people that are alive today is not only the most we've ever had alive in history, but that all of the people that have ever lived are still less than the amount that are alive today. I mean, what a profound statement, that we're that overpopulated, that at least worldwide, that there's more people alive than the combined total throughout all of history. What a wonderful concept. What an intriguing concept that suggests that we should lower the population. And I mean, you can hear other things too. Like I've heard them say, our technology is more advanced than it's ever been before, and that we've learned more in the last, and I think currently we're saying the last 30 years, than all of history combined. Wow. I mean, wow. They're the kind of things that when I was 15 or even 18, I would have believed. But I guess it's sort of part of growing up that you realise that such things are a bit of nonsense. I mean, I'll start with the population thing. So we're currently sitting on 7.7 billion. Now, that's certainly more than we had last year and the year before. And we're still going up. In spite of this pandemic that's going on, we've actually had an increase in people this year. Not a very big increase, but a little bit of an increase. And I've heard it said that they're predicting that it'll eventually plateau out at about 20 billion. And then we won't really go up anymore. Now, 7 billion, we had, at the end of World War II, we had just over 2 billion worldwide. So it's pretty much tripled in 70 years. It's taken 70 years to triple. So it's not exactly going up at an exponential rate. It's tripled in 70 years. Not 5 years, not 10 years, 70 years. It took that long to triple. And if you look at it last year, it was pretty much the same as it is this year. It's a little bit up. It's going up, much more quickly than it used to, but it's not exactly doubling every year or anything strange like that. Like the virus, in comparison, doubles every 3 days, at least when it's not controlled. So it's not doing anything. Our population is not exploding like that. It did explode quite a lot after World War II. But yeah, so it's tripled. And of course, before that, it actually doubled from about 1810 until about 1910. So in that century, it doubled. So it went from 1 billion, they just hit 1 billion around about 1810. And that was the first time in recorded history that we'd gone over 1 billion. At least that we're sure that we definitely went over 1 billion. There were a few claims that we'd gone over 1 billion before that, but we weren't quite sure because we hadn't really kept very good records. And then we went up to 2 billion by the start of the World War I. And I mean, that's a doubling in 100 years. And then we had a tripling in 70 years. But all of that might not sound all that impressive, but actually it's incredibly impressive compared to the time before that. And there's different estimates as to what the world's population was. But we generally have the view that going right back to biblical times, so 2,000 years ago, we still had something close to 1 billion people on the earth. And I mean, so there wasn't really any difference for 2,000 years. It'd go up a little bit and then it'd go down, and then it'd go up again and then it'd go down. Because what would always happen is that any time when it went up a little bit, something bad would happen. It'd be like, there was this belief, in fact, that we couldn't get beyond 1 billion. And that was a common belief that was held, because every time when we got just a little bit over it, and of course we weren't completely sure, because we weren't doing very good censuses in those days, but every time we felt like we were above a certain point, we'll just say, whether it was 1 billion or maybe it was 800 million, whatever it was, we'd have something happen. So the bubonic plague kept coming back, and that one would kill. Like if you had the bubonic plague in an area, you'd have half the population would die. Perhaps not straight away, but they would eventually die. If you got it, you were like a 3/4 chance of dying. And if you came into contact with it, you're a 3/4 chance of getting it. So, it was extremely toxic, and it's probably the most devastating disease that's ever been. And we wasn't just that one. We had smallpox. We had all sorts of other things, some that we don't even know the names of, and we still haven't really understood. They came, they killed heaps of people, and then they'd finished. And we don't know what they were. Some of the ancient viruses from like 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, we still don't know what they were. We just know they killed a lot of people. And some of them we've got some idea, but we don't know. And these things kept happening. It wasn't just viruses either. Sometimes there would be big wars would be held. Like we'd have all these people in this particular area, and they decide that they're so powerful they want to invade someone else. And sometimes that invasion would be very one-sided. Not many people would die. And other times it'd be very close because there'd be an opposition put in, and then everyone from both sides would die, or large proportions of them. Close wars would lead to a lot of people dying. And of course, on top of that, you also had some kings and leaders, sultans, whatever they were called, would just go around killing everybody. Or they'd kill people of a certain disposition, and then you'd have an uprising and all sorts of things like that. So, it was really cruel, and people, every time we got something go good, it'd go bad again. So that pattern actually wasn't just going back 2,000 years. In fact, we have a little bit of recorded history. Now, we didn't exactly record every day. We didn't record every day for 2,000 years. We've only really recorded, like in great detail, for the last 500 years. So even going to 2,000 years ago, we still have people that dispute whether Jesus Christ really was alive. That was only 2,000 years ago. There's still people that dispute that. They think that's made up. There's not enough evidence. I mean, I think there is, but that's how little evidence we have, even of 2,000 years ago, let alone if we go back 10,000 years ago. We know a few things that happened, but we don't exactly know the dates because we weren't recording years. So people were still recording things like they'd say, this is the 3rd year of the Han dynasty or whatever, or 5 years since the volcano erupted, and they keep that up to date for a little while. But after 20 or so years, they'd forget what the right number was, and then some people would lie about it. And so it was very hard to be sure how long everything was. And calendars were usually kept according to how long a king was in power for, or a leader of some kind. And then they'd start again at 0 once that happened. Sometimes they'd start again at 0 when a volcano erupted, rather than a king. So we don't have very reliable times. People have tried really hard. There's a lot of people that have spent a lot of work trying to get these times as close as possible, but we still can't pinpoint exactly what year, let alone what month, Jesus Christ was born, or even when he died. And that's, and again, even if he existed. So that puts a lot of question marks onto that. But one thing is, if we go back to the last cataclysm, and this is probably the point, my little rambling here. So that was what we call the Younger Dryas. Dryas. And that's the Great Flood. It's the same thing. And so that was around about 11,500 years ago. So we go to that point, and that's kind of where our population starts. Now, there's different views as to how big the world's population was after that had finished destroying the Earth. But it's anywhere from 100 million to 400 million people. So if you sort of look at censuses that didn't really exist, and we sort of put the lower figure, we're talking about 100 million. But if we sort of say, oh well, there was quite a lot of people in this part of the world and so forth, we're saying 400 million. So that's the range. Now, if you also then take into account that this cataclysm killed 99% of all animals and plants, 75% of all species were wiped out, including saber-toothed tigers and woolly mammoths. 99%. You therefore times that number by 100, and that therefore gets you between 10 billion and 40 billion people before the Great Flood. And that's not a religious thing. This is me talking science. So I'm just calling it the Great Flood just because people know that term. if you want to call it the Younger Dryas, so before the Younger Dryas, between 10 and 40 billion people. And of course we're saying 99%, that what if it's 99.2%? Suddenly it's 50 billion. So we don't know the exact number. We do know that it's probably a lot more than we have alive today. And that makes sense if you consider that we're nowhere near a cataclysm yet. In fact, we're probably at about the halfway point. It's the next one. So it might be another 11,000 years before we have one. It might be 10,000, might be 8,000, but it could be 20,000. Because it's a little bit erratic when we have this. So the last one before the 11,500 one was 45,000. So that's a gap of over 30,000 years. But the one before that was 65,000. So that's only a 20,000 year gap. So we don't know exactly. It could be 20,000 year gap or 35,000 year gap or 33,000 year gap. So it's a little bit erratic. Perhaps that variance is due to what people do to control air pollution. What the hell am I saying? There's pollution? Yes, I am. And that's what, if you look at, you just have to look at the pyramids. You can look at various structures that were created that we can't create today with our technology. So they had technology that was at least in some ways more advanced than what we have today, and they had them before the cataclysm. Perhaps just before, I don't know. Maybe we'll get past it once we build our next cataclysm. Maybe in 3,000 or 4,000 years we'll get there. But we're not actually there yet. We can't actually build things. It's just not possible. With our current technology, we're nowhere near being able to build it. We can't even cut that stone, no matter what we use. We can't cut it with that precision. We can't put them up there so that they'll last for 20 years, let alone, well, maybe they can last for 100 years. Look, but they wouldn't last for as long as they lasted. We don't even know how long they've lasted for, but it could be, even if we take the conservative estimate of 5,000 years, we can't build something that will last 5,000 years today. We don't know how. Not something that big, certainly not. And we can't build with that precision. And there's all sorts of things. Now, of course, we could do if we used Nikola Tesla's wireless electricity, but we're too scared to use that. And I'm pretty confident that the ancient Egyptians had that technology. In fact, I think it was all over the world. So, I think more likely we have gone in little circles. That we've gone population and technology, going up, cataclysm, and then back down again. And at the end of each cataclysm, we reach a peak. So just before the cataclysm, I'm saying. But then that's wiped back. And there. So I think just before the next cataclysm, we'll probably get to the level, or something close to the level that we're at the last one. And the key is, and I think the key thing that we're missing, is that we need to acknowledge that these ancient cultures were actually a lot more powerful than we're claiming. And once we can take on whatever their technology was, I think that we will be on a path to being far more advanced than we were before. And perhaps finally we can survive a cataclysm intact and live out to see the next one. And I think that's more important than remembering where to put your recycling. And I think climate change is aiming at the wrong direction. We should be aiming at remembering our past rather than blaming it. Rather than blaming people putting things in the wrong recycling bin, we should be looking at technology and technology of the past as a higher priority. I'm not saying don't recycle. I'm just saying there's bigger things at stake. Anyway, that's it from me. Bye bye.